You are Locked On Pistons Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Detroit on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I mean, are we serious? Second largest road win in franchise history. The Pistons destroy the Pelicans tonight. It wasn't even a game. Welcome into a live Locked On Pistons postcast. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I am your host, Jake Riepma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Riepma. And the Pistons didn't need any of the luck of the Irish tonight. My goodness, it was men against boys out there. 127-81 the final in this one. And the Pistons were playing angry after the loss to Oklahoma City, and they took it out on the Pelicans. Pistons now 38-31. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. Of course, we'll go over where the Pistons left, no doubt. We'll have our turning point and our player of the game. Don't go anywhere. That's all coming up next. And as always, we thank you for making the Locked On Pistons postcast your post-game destination, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, on YouTube, it's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. Don't forget, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter, and you can get it for free at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pistons newsletter. And from the jump, the Pistons showed no mercy. However you want to describe the pummeling of the opposition, that's what was on full display tonight. I'm getting settled in, dialing it up. All right, another Pistons game night. Got to bounce back from the loss to Oklahoma City. And what do you see but outscoring the Pelicans 35-13 in the opening quarter, 28-19 in the second quarter. And the lead was so enormous at halftime, a 31-point lead at the halftime break. I mean, I got to be honest. I did some chores around the house. I had it on in the background, of course. But, on a night like tonight, this is the second time in a couple of weeks where we've said, hey, this one is a snoozer. Pistons got this. The other team just doesn't even belong on the same floor as the Detroit Pistons. Now, some of this on the New Orleans Pelicans. Zero motivation to be there, zero heart, zero energy, effort, any of the other things that it takes to play even a competent brand of basketball. The Pelicans had none of that, especially in the first half. And so, I want to give the Pistons a lot of credit. They were the superior team on paper. They went out and proved it and absolutely dominated from the jump. I guess it got down to 20 in the third quarter, and JB Bickerstaff had to call a timeout. But after that, I mean, forget about it. Smooth sailing once again. And maybe you had a couple of green beers since it was officially St. Patrick's Day. I know I said happy St. Patrick's Day in the open, but I'll reiterate it there because it was a St. Patrick's party at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, but for the Detroit Pistons. I mean, this was just an absolute butt kicking. They boat raced them from the beginning, and there's no other way to put it that this Detroit Pistons team absolutely dominated the New Orleans Pelicans. Appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, it is a pleasure to be on the air with you. And we appreciate each and every one that chooses to make the Locked On Pistons postcast your post-game destination. I think there's something going on because somehow, some way, my television just turned on. We're going to turn that off right now. How does that happen? It's live. We're live. That was wild. I think there's some ghosts in the studio as we speak. I don't know how that happens. Television just turns on out of nowhere. So thanks for bearing with me. It's a live Locked On Pistons postcast. That is a little bit spooky on a St. Patrick's Day, but lo and behold, we're back with you. Let's get into some of your comments before we get into the X's and O's, because I always enjoy hearing from everybody that's tuned in to a live Locked On Pistons postcast, and that includes Demetrius McNeil, our number one supporter of the program, friend of the program. Demetrius McNeil just says next. Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I did start looking ahead to the Pistons' upcoming schedule. Of course, you got the game against the Miami Heat on Wednesday. That game's going to be on ESPN, and then I'll be at the game against the Dallas Mavericks at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. Looking forward to that Friday night. The Mavs don't have any players left. I mean, if you followed that whole saga, obviously the huge trade with Luka Doncic and the downfall of the Dallas Mavericks and Nico Harrison driving that franchise into the ground, but they don't have any bodies. Dante Exum went out the other day. They're down to 7 players. It's absolutely insane. So with this, maybe the Pistons, after losing 2 straight, can start to stockpile some wins again. And tonight was a really good start with that because, again, they were just a dominant team. Everybody played great. And I think, again, part of it is a combination that the Pelicans had no interest in being there. Frank Norman said, everybody going to play. Yeah, exactly. Or everyone going to pay. That's also a good point. Everyone did play tonight because it was such a blowout. I mean, heck, even Lindy Waters got in there. You got Marcus Sasser at the end, and not to take anything away from those guys, Paul Reed as well, but just guys that don't see the floor as often. But yes, everyone's going to pay for what transpired at the Little Caesars Arena the previous evening, because that is when JB Bickerstaff went off. He stood up for his team. He said his team is disrespected, which if you missed that episode, go back and take a listen, because I think we did an adequate job of discussing all the different angles within that game. And credit Oklahoma City Thunder, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 48 points. SGA was brilliant, but obviously the Pistons felt shortchanged from the officiating, and it boiled over to where Cade was ejected. JB Bickerstaff goes off post game, and so on and so forth. And I think if you're, there's going to be a lot of people, myself included, that will take that game on Saturday night as a measuring stick. And okay, now what do the Pistons do from there? Is that in fact a turning point? And a 1-game sample size, it absolutely was, because the Pistons came out madder than a hornet and just ready to dominate. I think whatever team in the National Basketball Association they played tonight, they were going to beat up a little bit. And that's, you know, when you play as poor of a team as the Pelicans, it's going to be amplified. But I think whatever team took the floor against the Pistons tonight was in for a punishment. Of course, now New Orleans 18-50, so they've taken enough of a punishment this whole season. But Detroit Pistons take down the New Orleans Pelicans in a blowout of a game. It was a 31-point game at halftime. Second largest win in franchise history on the road. Second largest road win. George Blaha and Special K, Greg Kessler, had the stat that they beat the Boston Celtics, I believe, in the early 2000s by 50 plus on the road. So that's pretty impressive. But tonight was also really impressive and a lot of fun to watch. Coming up, we have our turning point and our player of the game. But before we go any further, it's time to really take a deep dive into what we'll be talking about.
This is what you'll be talking about.
I think it's just the overall dominance of the Detroit Pistons and the resolve and resilience to bounce back after a really tough night against the Oklahoma City Thunder on Saturday night. Because a lot of times, and I think the Pistons would fall victim to this in the past, where one tough loss leads to another, and you get into this funk. And under JB Bickerstaff in this new regime, the Detroit Pistons haven't had these long losing streaks that we are so accustomed to. And yes, the loss to the Thunder marked the second loss in a row, but you stop the bleeding, you patch up the holes, you go out and you take it out on an inferior New Orleans Pelicans team, and that's exactly what they did. Of course, it didn't hurt that the Pelicans shot 20% in the first quarter and just under 25% in the second quarter. That is certainly another way to help build a lead, but you just go up and down this box score, and there's just not one area that the Pistons didn't dominate in. They shoot 55% from the floor compared to New Orleans 33%. From the long line, they were 38%. The Pelicans just 5 of 32. I mean, this is really bad. This, any way you slice it. The Pistons got out and ran in transition. They had 20 points off 6 Pelican turnovers, and you look at the fast break points, 23-4. There's a couple of runouts where it's like you're watching AAU basketball, and the Pelicans just unable to get back on defense. So kind of wild there. They certainly have a lot of work to do, but we're not concerned about the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll let the Locked On Pelicans cover that, because we've got a ball club that made a statement tonight after a difficult loss on Saturday to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that, my friends, is what we'll be talking about. Coming up, we'll have our turning point and our player of the game. Don't go anywhere. That's next on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. This episode of the Locked On Pistons postcast is brought to you by DoorDash. All right, NBA fans, get ready, because when they swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more points in a game during the NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off their order, up to $10 off the next day from noon until midnight. And hey, we got March Madness coming up, so you know you're going to have those late night cravings when you're watching those games out west, whether you're staying up watching the highlights or you just need that midnight snack. You got to use that Dash Pass to grab something delicious while saving big. And hey, maybe you're having a watch party. Fuel that watch party. Plan to catch the next game. Order your go-to snacks and meals at discount prices and get ready for more high-scoring action. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day. That's up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon until midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Today's episode of the Locked On Pistons postcast is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. By now, you know it's FanDuel. And guess what? March Madness is here. Selection Sunday was yesterday. The brackets are out, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. I love it. You stay in on the action with tournament games happening almost every day. There's always something exciting to bet in, and that includes the first four. Don't forget about the first four on Tuesday and Wednesday. Some big names in that one: Texas, Xavier, North Carolina, although they shouldn't be in. We all know that. Anyways, you got to visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. And this episode of the Locked On Pistons postcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. That's right, Monarch Money, my friends. Listen up. Even check your bank account, and sometimes you wonder, if you ever check that bank account, you wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. That's right, it's not. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts and investments and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money, you start building wealth. That's what it's all about. Surprising insights. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food. Now I budget smarter and save more. It's an all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances. With Monarch Money, use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Good Lord, never thought that would end. Happy to be back with you on a live Locked On Pistons postcast. As always, appreciate everybody tuning in. It's always a happy Locked On Pistons postcast when the Pistons dominate to the tune of a 46-point win on the road, 127-81. It was never close. My goodness. And individually speaking, some really impressive performances. And that's what we're going to get to right now. It's time for the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
I think you could honestly say this game was won Saturday night in the post-game press conference when JB Bickerstaff went off on the officiating, when he stood up for his guys and basically said they're disrespected. Not basically, he did. He said they're disrespected and he won't tolerate it anymore. And the Pistons are good for the league. He said that. They're young, they play hard, they do a lot of things right. And it's time the rest of the league pays this team some respect. So honestly, I felt like the next game for the Pistons, it turned right then and there. Now, as for the play on the court, just the energy level from the Pistons in that opening quarter to come out, punch the opposition in the mouth, and then go for the jugular right away and just suffocate this New Orleans team and give them absolutely zero reason to even continue participating in this game and believing that they had any semblance of a shot to win. So that's your turning point right there. I credit, and again, I said this earlier in the show, Pistons are one. We're going to be talking about that post-game, I guess you could say, rant from JB Bickerstaff, and as a measuring stick, okay, what are the Pistons' records since that Saturday night against the Oklahoma City Thunder? That's what we're going to be doing, and I look forward to it. So I guess 1-0 since then. Up next for the Pistons, they take on the Miami Heat, but we've got time for our player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Indeed, it is. I'm inclined to give it to the entire Pistons team. I mean, honestly, like from all the starters all the way down to the bench players, but the bench was really, really good tonight. And I got to show some love to Simone Fontecchio. 23 points. He was plus 24, all off the bench, of course. 5 of 5 from the long line, 9 of 10 from the floor. What an efficient game. You could say his best game in a Detroit Pistons uniform, and it was fun to watch. What a spark he was off the bench for the Detroit Pistons. Got to give Fontecchio a lot of credit, and man, that was neat to see. And you're happy for a guy that really the team seems to really enjoy. And again, you could have picked anybody on the Pistons roster tonight because they were all better than the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion Williamson did lead the way with 30, probably pretended there was a couple of cheeseburgers up at the rim, and that's why he was so excited to get up there and maybe at the free throw line too, because he got to the foul line 15 times tonight. So that being said, Detroit wins at 127-81. Pistons 38-31, 20-15 on the road. And again, it's one more time we can point to JB Bickerstaff, Trajan Langdon, and the rest of the organization in this new regime and how much improvements they have made, because, man, it has been stellar. But appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Make sure you join me Wednesday night after the Pistons take on the Miami Heat. That game's on ESPN as well. So we'll have a live Locked On Pistons post-cast after that one. And baseball season right around the corner. Man, I'm excited for Tigers baseball. They open in Los Angeles against the Dodgers. So we'll have some late-night Locked On Tigers post-game shows to kick off the season. Looking forward to that. Hey, tell a friend about the Locked On Pistons postcast. It's real simple. It's a post-game show after Detroit sporting events, and we get on here, live reaction. We get in the comments. We commiserate, whatever the situation calls for. We've got your back. And I appreciate Demetrius McNeil. I appreciate everybody that tunes in on a regular basis, because, man, that's what makes the show go. So until Wednesday night, have a wonderful rest of your night. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy this one. The Pistons lead from wire to wire, 127-81 for their 38th win of the season. Don't forget to check out LockedOnDaily.com and sign up for free for the Locked On Pistons newsletter that goes right to your inbox at LockedOnDaily.com. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next time on Locked On Sports Detroit.